Good afternoon again. Welcome back after our break to our second module of the day, Taking Action Through Service. As Greg said, I'm Elizabeth Tezza. I am the current Leadership Development Coordinator, and just a nice little announcement and a segue, I'll be passing that hat off to Greg McDonald. So he will be your incoming Leadership Development Coordinator for the next several Kiwanis years. What we're going to talk today about the Kiwanis family, which includes all of our service leadership programs. And these are the things that we'll be covering today. And first up, we will be referencing the leadership guide. And as well, you would have received also a PDF copy of all of the slides, as Greg mentioned before. To just reiterate some of the instructions that Greg gave you earlier, you'll be better able to view the slides if you're on your Zoom screen at full screen, selecting speaker view. We have allowed time at the end of the session for you to ask questions, but if you have questions during the session, one of our facilitators will be alerting us to that. And as a courtesy, if you'll please mute yourself, then we'll minimize all of the background noise. So first up, I would like to introduce our Governor, John Hethcox of the Columbia Kiwanis Club, to tell us a little bit about this very interesting year we've been having with the COVID pandemic.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's great to be with you all, and thank you for your time. I think we're up to 38 attendees, which is great. That means we've had some folks trickle in from the earlier part of the call. I know that and recognize that it is a Friday afternoon. You probably have a lot of other things that you could be doing, but the fact is that you elected to be here today with us to hear from Greg and from Elizabeth, from Governor-elect Chris, all of the wonderful things that are really, that are really important and that are relevant to your leadership as a club officer. So that's the first thing I want to do is thank you for your service. Some of you have served roles in your clubs before. Some of you are brand new and you're still wondering, what am I going to do? What is this year going to look like? It's a year unlike any other. But I can tell you that in the multitude of Zoom calls that I've been on over this past couple of months as we've been in the throes of the pandemic, I can tell you that Kiwanis clubs in North and South Carolina, and indeed all over the world, have shown such resiliency. It's been amazing to see how clubs have taken on service projects that they didn't think that they would be involved in, or they've been involved in a service project for a long time, but they've had to pivot and create a new way to do that service. Likewise with fundraising, we know for a fact that many Kiwanis clubs have had to cancel or postpone fundraising activities, but lots of Kiwanis clubs have gotten creative to try to figure out a way that they can deliver on their promise of raising funds and committing those funds to their own communities and to the Kiwanis Children's Fund and to our district foundation. So on behalf of our district, I can't express my gratitude and thanks enough for your efforts to maintain some semblance of normalcy in the time that we're living in. It's just so inspiring to see. I'll have more remarks tomorrow during our VCon. So hopefully you've registered for both CLE and VCon. So I don't want to step on any of my my prepared remarks that I'll have for tomorrow. But other than that, to say thank you. Now, Elizabeth will be covering things like service leadership programs, and those are just so unbelievably important to our overall mission. And I really want you to pay attention to what she's going to deliver, because as you know, Kiwanis clubs have been, as we've said and as we've realized in the midst of the coronavirus, Kiwanis clubs, the way they've operated has changed. And that's going to be the same for our service leadership programs. You can't even set foot on a campus of a high school if you're not a student or a teacher or staff member. So how are we going to move forward with our key club programs? Likewise, Circle K. So we're going to have to be really figure out a way to adapt to this new way of living, at least in the short term. But if there's anybody that can do it, I have a great suspicion and feeling that it's going to be Kiwanians who are going to be there to serve their communities, and they're going to figure out a way to do it. So again, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to give it back to Elizabeth. And as Chris indicated earlier, if you need anything, please don't hesitate to let me know. My phone number and email are well publicized, believe me. So please feel free to drop me a line. Also, my term doesn't end until September 30th at 11:59 p.m. So feel free to invite me to any of your club meetings. I'm happy to Zoom in and bring you some glad tidings from the district. It's my honor and my privilege. So thanks, Elizabeth, and I'll kick it back over to you.
Thank you, John. John was the perfect person to speak at this particular session of Club Leadership Education, because if you didn't know, he's got a Key Club background and Circle K, and he's been a Circle K district governor as well as a Circle K international trustee. So he is a case in point of our service leadership program, youth and young adults coming into Kiwanis and serving as leaders. And that's really what it is all about. As a Kiwanis family, one of the things that we really want to inculcate in these children and youth and young adults is service leadership, and giving them a background so that when they become adults, are out in the world working and are post education, that they will join Kiwanis and continue to serve. And I'm having a little technical difficulty, so Joe, we may have to restart the slides again, so just bear with us. The first thing I do want to talk about is our service leadership programs. We define service leadership as the next beyond service learning. So young people understand the concept of learning by helping others. So that's why Kiwanis developed our service leadership programs. They are our signature project on an international level, and they are also very positive for parents, for teachers, school administrators, and others that are interested in serving youth. So we have the largest and oldest service clubs in the world. We are the only, for example, I'm going to start off with Action Club because that's something that's near and dear to my heart. Action Club is the only service leadership club, community service club for individuals with disabilities, or as we say, different abilities. If you've never been to an Action Club convention or an Action Club meeting, you're really missing out, because they actually get it. They really have a heart for service. Then you go to Circle K International. Circle K is the largest collegiate service organization in the world. Although they are small in number, they are actually the member of the Kiwanis family that devotes the most number of service hours per member each year. Key Club, again, is the largest high school service organization, and it is the only one with an international leadership structure with an international board and international president. It is usually somewhere in the neighborhood north of 250,000 every single year. For middle school, we have Builders Club, again, one of the largest service clubs for middle school students, and K-Kids, which is for elementary school. One of the things that we do know is going to happen to us this year is it is entirely possible that our Kiwanis advisors will not be able to set foot on any campus. And that is, first of all, very understandable. We as an organization are taking great pains to be in compliance with all local, state, and national guidelines so that we can control this pandemic. One of the things that I have access to is some of the information that's being developed, some of the systems that it's being developed at Kiwanis International by the Kiwanis Youth Program staff. I'm actually on a committee called Key Club 2.0, and we received a report that the Kiwanis Youth Program staff is working very, very hard on virtual online offerings for Key Club's hopefully also for Circle K. Not sure about K Kids and Builders Club yet, but we are developing online resources and webinars. There is also curriculum being developed that might be actually certified curriculum. Those will be in a beta test this fall. So our Kiwanis International is working very, very hard in this area, in the COVID pandemic situation that we're in, to provide even more resources. So as those resources become available, you can make sure that we will be pushing those out in our CD News, and as well, all Kiwanis advisors should be receiving those notifications of those resources by email. We also have Kiwanis branded programs. As you know, we unfortunately had to cancel our key leaders. We had one scheduled for April and one for November, but those are overnight events, and so our Kiwanis District Board had to cancel those events. Hopefully those will be back, but Key Leader is a leadership weekend experience for high school students. It's not limited to Key Club members, and so if you don't have a Key Club, you could certainly offer scholarships to that weekend event to high school students. And if it's a spring event, an 8th grader that's a rising high school student would also be eligible to attend. And then in line with our K Kids, which is for elementary school, we also have the 2 branded programs, Kiwanis Terrific Kids, which is a citizenship, a good citizenship award, and BUG, which is Bring Up Grades. That is a lot of schools, especially where I'm from in South Carolina, already have grade programs for bringing up their grades and awards. But if your school doesn't have something, these 2 programs, Terrific Kids and BUG, are a great way of getting into the schools, being able to offer something to the teachers. One of the things that clubs often miss is the sponsorship responsibilities for sponsoring a service leadership program club. There are 10 major sponsorship responsibilities, and you actually have to sign a piece of paper agreeing to follow these guidelines, or as well as you can, in conjunction with your schools. First up is every service leadership program club should have a Kiwanis Club advisor and not just a faculty advisor. And that goes for K Kids, Builders Club, Key Club, and Circle K. I have had the occasion in my 20-some years of Kiwanis, when somebody asked me what Kiwanis is, and I asked them a question. I'm like, have you ever heard of Key Club? Oh, yes, I was in Key Club, but they don't know what Kiwanis is. It's incumbent upon us as Kiwanis clubs to make sure that our Key Clubs and our Circle Ks and our Builders Clubs and K Kids know who we are, that we are their sponsor. And that means, to my next point, attending their meetings and events. This fall, I'm not going to be able to attend my Key Club meetings unless they're on Zoom, which they probably will be. I'm an advisor for 2 clubs this year. But we need to make sure that we are available to be present at their meetings. If the Builders Clubbers and the K Kids may need help with their meetings, but if you go to a Key Club meeting or a Circle K meeting, you're not doing anything but observing. They're running their own meetings, they're doing their PowerPoints, they're selecting their service projects, etc. But you do need to be present. You also need to support them with a line item in your service account, whether that's helping them get to district convention, whether it's sending them to a Key Leader event, whether it's giving them a scholarship to go to their international convention, or perhaps a college scholarship. Please make sure that if you do have a service leadership program club, that you have associated line items in your budget. That's not just a service project. That's something that you are an official sponsor of, and you need to follow that up with a budget line item. Make sure you're in good communication with your principal and your faculty advisors. The principal is the one who has to sign off on kids going to a fall rally or a district convention, or if they get elected, lieutenant governor needs to sign that paperwork. So it's it's really a good idea to make sure the principal knows you, knows your name, and knows that Kiwanis is involved on your campus. And also, your faculty advisors are your most important, because they are your they provide your access onto the campus, and they are your liaison with the kids. You need to make sure that their dues and fees are paid. Some Kiwanis advisors actually do the paperwork for that, and sometimes it's done by the school. But if it is done by the school, just make sure you know who is responsible for it. You also need to ensure that the officers receive training for Builders Club and K-Kids. That's done with the Kiwanis advisor and the faculty advisor, and appropriate materials are sent by Kiwanis International for that. Key Club and Circle K, they are trained on the division and the district level. And so they also have lieutenant governors of their divisions that provide the club officer training. And again, it's also offered on the district level. So make sure that they are able to get to those club training offerings wherever they happen. Also, an annual joint meeting of the Kiwanis Club and the Service Leadership Program Club. Sometimes that's not always possible, but inviting them to your meeting and attend, and having Kiwanians attend their meetings would be sufficient. Hosting and participating in joint projects. I know that many clubs do that, and maybe it's not always having them come help at your fundraiser, but actually doing some real service projects together. Making sure you invite them to attend meetings sometimes, and also have them speak. If you have sent them to an international convention or a key leader, have them come and give a program about the participation that they had and the things that they learned. Have your scholarship winners come and read their essays, etc. And make sure that they have the opportunity to go to training beyond the club. Those that are interested in leadership, make sure that they can get to the district events. That's where they will meet all of the clubs from around the Carolinas district. And just like we learn things outside of our own club, they do the same. So make sure that they are able to get to those events. What we really want to make sure of is that you take your sponsorship responsibilities very, very seriously. And one of the main things in that, and I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide, is I'm going to talk about background checks. Background checks are very, very important for not only your protection, and the protection of the children that we serve, but for the liability protection of Kiwanis International and your club. Recently, our District Secretary Leah Moret sent out an email to all club secretaries asking them to check the secretary dashboard in Kiwanis One to make sure that the correct Kiwanis advisor was listed for each of your service leadership program clubs, and to also check and see if they had a background check. Several years ago, Kiwanis required all advisors of service leadership program clubs, including Circle K, Action Club, Key Club, basically all of them, to have a background check done by the Kiwanis International provider, which is Safe Hiring Solutions. The deadline for that was, I think, this past spring, but because of the pandemic, it was extended. But by September 1, all Kiwanis advisors of our service leadership program clubs must have a cleared background check. What happens, the procedure for that is the club secretary enters that Kiwanian as the advisor. That advisor then gets an email from Safe Hiring Solutions. They answer the questions, they send it back, and then the background check, it can take, Leah has told me that it can take up to a week between the clearing the background check and actually having the check mark on that person's record in the secretary dashboard. So club secretaries, if you are on this call, or basically all of our club presidents or presidents-elect on the call. When you get back to your club next week, please ask your club secretary if they got that email and if they have followed through. If you don't, if you have an advisor that is no longer in your club or is no longer the advisor, don't wait until you have a new advisor to take that person's name out. Go ahead and remove the person's name, because if there is an advisor on record that does not have a background check, the schools are going to be notified that that advisor has not passed a background check and would not be allowed on your campus. As you know, many of the schools do their own background checks, but those are not a replacement for a Kiwanis International background check. I hope you don't think I've gone over that too long, but it is very, very important, and I wanted to take the opportunity to fully explain it to you. So if you have any questions about that, you can email Leah or you can email me. Our email addresses are, you know Leah's, and mine is emteza@gmail.com. If you, and we also have our youth protection managers for the Carolinas District, Dawn Puderbaugh-Hodges and Brittany Love. You could also, if you have any questions, you can ask them as well. So now we're going to move on to youth protection guidelines, and I'll refer you to it's pages 68 and 70 in your Kiwanis Leadership Guide, but we'll just go over them very briefly. They are right in line with everything that you think that you might need to cover. There is, we need to, first of all, every club has to have education on youth protection, and it's a very, the youth protection guidelines, not only are they in your leadership guide, if you go to kiwanis.org/youth protection, everything that you need is on that page. There's also a PowerPoint, and you can use that to educate your club each year. Each year, you should go over this with your entire club, and I know that Dawn and Brittany are also available to, if you, since we're all on Zoom now, or many of us are on Zoom, one of them or I can Zoom in and do that youth protection guidelines training for your club. It talks about chaperones, again, the criminal history background checks, overnight stays, transportation, use of alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and other substances, medication, reporting, social media. There's just a plethora of information. And so I would encourage you to make sure that you read and understand the youth protection guidelines, and that you either have someone in your club, you might have a lawyer or a social worker in your club, have them give that training. It's very, very easy. Or again, contact one of us and we'll be glad to help you with that. It's basically incumbent upon us as Kiwanians. Our service is mostly service to children, and so it behooves us to do everything that we can do to educate ourselves on guidelines and best practices, so that we can make sure we're serving our youth to the best of our ability. Our next topic is community-based service, and why would we think that's important? These 4 bullet points really talk to our strategic plan as a district and as Kiwanis International. We want to make sure that we're making a lasting impact in our community, and whether that's a playground or that's a reading nook or that's a backpack program, it's something that's ongoing. It's something that makes a real impact for children. Another thing it can do is strengthen membership. So when people see you out, I think I used to say the best way to ask somebody to join Kiwanis is take them to a service project or a terrific kids ceremony so that they can actually see what you do. And so you will attract like people. It helps you strengthen your membership. It will help you create and cement long-term partnerships, whether that's with corporations in your area, whether that's with other nonprofits, and it expands our brand. People actually look to us. I will say, I'll just talk about a Key Club impact. The Key Club at Wando Key Club, which is my club's Key Club. they're the largest club at Wando. And so who is the club that's asked to do things? They are, because the administration and several of the nonprofits in the community see them out making an impact in their community. And so I always say, if you're the busiest person gets asked to do things, well, also the club that's out in the community doing things, they're the ones that get noticed, that get recognized, and are asked to, again, partner with other nonprofits, etc. Now we move to foundation. So we have two foundations we're going to talk about today. One is the Kiwanis Children's Fund, which is our international foundation. It funds local club needs. It funds regional and the district foundations are regional priorities. And the Children's Fund, not only does it provide grants to clubs, it amplifies us. We can do more together than we could do by ourselves. So the Children's Fund is designed with Kiwanians in mind, and they have, in the past few years, they have changed their funding cycles and the way they provide assistance. The old way was you filled out this very long grant application, went through a whole lot of work, and didn't even know if you were meeting the guidelines. And they have changed to provide, first of all, one-on-one staff assistance. So the first thing you do is submit a letter of intent. And when you do that, a staff member at the Children's Fund is assigned to you, and you are able to walk with the grant process, with that person through the grant process. They've also expanded. They've gone from 2 funding cycles to 3 funding cycles. So you don't have to wait for a date. You just, if you have a grant that you think you would like to submit, fill out the letter of intent. It can be found at this the website KiwanisChildren'sFund.org/club grants. Again, you'll be assigned a person to work with and walk through that. Bear in mind that, as with most grants, they do not fund brick and mortar. So it's usually programming. However, they do provide grants for playgrounds because that's specifically for children. And I know that there are a few playgrounds in the Carolinas district that have been helped by Kiwanis Children's Fund's grants. The Eliminate project is, this is 2020, so we were supposed to be wrapping up our fundraising this year, and we were on track to try and do that, but the pandemic has kind of stopped us in our tracks, and we are proceeding with some of our annual club gifts, but the Eliminate project funding has slowed down quite a bit. We will keep continuing to fundraise until all of the monies have been raised. There are still 12 countries at risk, but the flip side of that is not only has the fundraising slowed, but the ability for our UNICEF teams to go out in the field and provide inoculations has also come to a standstill because of the pandemic. And so everything is kind of on hold right now, and hopefully post-pandemic we'll be able to rev right up, finish our fundraising, and complete our project. So if you still have a club grant that hasn't been paid, we're still taking money. The project hasn't ended. And in fact, our first worldwide service project, iodine deficiency disorders, that was basically completed in 2001. But we're still raising monies for those efforts in a specific fund within the Children's Fund. And in fact, we funded a grant just this past year of $336,000 for iodine deficiency disorders. I believe it was for a plant in Cambodia that does salt iodization. So we will always have the Eliminate project. We just hope that we can raise the rest of the $110 million so that we can take these last 12 countries off the list. We also have Carolinas District Foundation, and it supports our district service leadership programs with scholarships, with grants to clubs. If you are a club that is chartering a new service leadership program, you can receive a 50% matching grant from the Carolinas District Foundation. They also help fund Young Children Priority 1 projects, They help with new clubs getting their service projects off the ground and their service leadership programs. And also, both foundations have an annual club gift campaign. Those annual club gift campaigns are the largest source of unrestricted giving for both foundations. And as a district, we strongly encourage you to give what you can. Usually it's anywhere from $5 to $10 per member per year, and those can be paid from your service accounts. Okay, we have actually reached the end of my presentation for this afternoon. I hope I didn't go too fast. And first of all, I'm going to hand it back to Greg shortly, but I'll be glad to entertain any questions that you might have on our service leadership programs.
Okay, I think I'm back. There I am. We're going to wrap this up for this afternoon. We've covered 2 of the 4 modules for the CLE. The other 2 will be the 2 forums that we will offer tomorrow during the virtual convention, educational portion of the virtual convention tomorrow morning.